We've had over 4 decades to top the very best werewolf film of all time. A Gen X classic, you know it, you love it. It's this. No, sorry. Sorry, Teen Wolf, not you. Although, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Teen Wolf. The movie I'm talking about is this. An American Werewolf in London. Possibly the greatest cinematic werewolf transformation of all time on the silver screen. Now, in the cinematic dumping grounds of January 2025, Leigh Whannell's Wolfman is hitting theaters. Is it more American Werewolf in London or more Teen Wolf? Let's find out right now on Gen X Movie Reviews. Alright, so Leigh Whannell's Wolfman is Universal's latest attempt to resurrect their monsterverse. Anybody remember the 2017 Tom Cruise vehicle, The Mummy, which was meant to kick off this right here, this cinematic universe, how they signed all these stars and made all these fantastic promises that went straight in the toilet as soon as The Mummy tanked? So after the failure of Universal's cinematic monsterverse, they brought in Leigh Whannell, who made a tight-paced fantastic little film called The Invisible Man. He brought it in for under $7 million, and that movie looked fantastic. It had Elizabeth Moss in the lead role, and it was riveting. Elizabeth Moss was absolutely phenomenal in the film, and the movie had a lot of themes that were a blast to watch. He had some real surprises in there, and you could tell that his heart was in the movie. He really cared. And for $7 million, he delivered an absolute banger of a film. Now, 5 years later, we have Leigh Whannell returning to the director's chair in the next film in the rebooted Monsterverse. And I gotta say, Wolfman is a really frustrating watch. There are moments of absolute brilliance here. There are so many cool cinematic storytelling beats, as only Leigh Whannell can do, that only serve to underscore how mediocre the rest of the film is. It's kind of heartbreaking. All right, let's get into it. The movie opens with Blake, a young boy, and his survivalist father out in the wilds of Oregon. After an encounter with an unnamed beast in the wild, the movie then jumps 30 years where we find the boy, Christopher Abbott's Blake, now married with a wife, Julia Garner, and his daughter, played by Matilda Firth. He receives notice that his father has passed away, so he gathers up his family and heads back to Oregon to collect his father's thing. Chaos and horror ensue. First, let's get into the good. The best moments in the film are hands down because of Leigh Whannell's clever cinematic language. He really knows how to put the camera in a place where we start to feel that transformation. We can feel Christopher Abbott's pain, we can feel his horror, we can feel his discombobulation, we can feel just how monstrous he's becoming. The absolutely standout moments for me are when Christopher Abbott's Blake is mid-transformation and he's desperately trying to communicate with his family. We get a perspective shift from Julia Garner over to Christopher Abbott. We see how Julia Garner is seeing the scene, and then the camera pivots over and lets us see Christopher Abbott's view of the scene, and then back to Julia Garner. It's an absolutely phenomenal way to tell the story, and it's something I don't think I've really seen in cinema before. Leigh Whannell allows us, the audience, a window into this very horrifying experience as Christopher Abbott transforms from something that is both less and more than human. I also think The Wolfman is smart in that it sort of takes that alien approach, in that we only see little snippets of the wolf as the movie begins. The slow build, constant tension. We're getting a sense of it, we're getting a sense of the menace, but we're not seeing the whole creature. I think that's a fantastic way to go. Until the reveal. But a little more on that later. Christopher Abbott turns in a fantastic performance here. There is something wounded and hurt behind his eyes, and you can really feel his drive to protect his family and to do whatever he can to protect his daughter. Which of course makes the movie all the more heartbreaking when he finally becomes the threat. He inhabits and brings a sad-eyed intensity to a man who was really wounded as a boy by having a cold, distant, angry father. As a Gen X dad with a 9-year-old kid, these moments really hit home for me. I completely understand where he's coming from, And it makes me empathize with him. Of course, I want him to protect his family as best he can. And I can see the drive within him, even with the sadness that he'll never be able to get that back from his father. The moments between Christopher Abbott and Matilda Firth, who plays his daughter, really have a nice tenderness and a grounded reality to them. And I think they both elevate each other. There's some really cool performance beats in there. They have a little moment together that they always do. And it really brought a smile to my face as I have those moments with my own son. The movie really starts off well in Christopher Abbott and Julia Garner's relationship as well. It's very subtle. We get like cool little nuances. We dive into little moments where we really start to understand their relationship. Nothing is overcranked, nothing is too over the top, but we really see that maybe these two are at a down point in their relationship. Julia Garner is consumed with her career. She feels like she doesn't really have a connection with her daughter. Where Christopher Abbott is a writer, but seems like he's been out of work for a while and he's running the household. These little moments with Christopher Abbott and Julia Garner really underscore and tell the story without hitting us over the head. And honestly, these are probably the best moments between Christopher Abbott and Julia Garner that we get in the film. Which brings me to the bad. Let's dive in because this sort of segs right into it. Look, I love Julia Garner. I think she is a phenomenal actress. She absolutely kicks ass. Her 4 seasons of Ozark, she was the standout character. She ripped my heart out and made me laugh and broke my heart all over again. And her performance there was vulnerable, open, a raw nerve. She really brought a rage and made us completely understand wholly who she was. We understood her motivations. We understood what drove her. We understood her relationships to everyone. She was a firecracker, a firebrand. She was an unstoppable force of nature in Ozark. And I was so excited to see this movie. She was the #1 reason why I wanted to see Wolfman. So it absolutely breaks my heart to say that she is the weakest link in Wolfman. Now, after about 20 minutes, this movie really becomes a three-hander, and you can't have a weak link when you're doing a three-hander. In the opening scenes of the movie, Julia Garner brings a real subtle nuance to her character. We get the sense that she's an overachiever at work, that she has a disconnect with her daughter, that her marriage is starting to fail, but she doesn't quite know how to reconnect. These are definitely her best moments in the film and the most engaging. And I really felt some promise here. However, once Christopher Abbott has been infected and the movie really kicks off, there's just something disconnected. Julia Garner really becomes almost inert as a character. There's no more forward movement. There's nothing where we see her learning or evolving. Even her most tender moment feels a little phoned in. She's almost sleepwalking through her scenes. There's the requisite gasping, shrieking, and knife wielding. But I, as an audience member, never really felt her feel the loss of her husband or the rekindling of a relationship with her daughter. It just feels odd. Her reactions are incredibly muted and not really true to life. It feels like she's in a different picture altogether, and I don't feel her loss. I don't feel her agony over losing her husband. I don't feel her desire to save him or rescue him or protect her daughter from it. It just feels like a wash. It just feels like she's barely there. There's nothing outlandish or bad about her performance. There's no like terrible acting, but it doesn't make me feel anything. There are moments with Christopher Abbott and Matilda Firth that I feel connected to them, and like it felt something. I was engaged in the story. I was feeling the loss between the two of them. But every moment that Julia Garner has just sort of feels like, okay, great. Yeah, there we go. It doesn't hit you. It doesn't gut punch you. And when a movie's a three-hander like this, and it's all about the loss of a loved one, I need to feel those things. Even her reactions to the Wolfman and the other creature outside, nothing really hits home, and honestly completely undoes the film. When the picture shifts over and we lose Christopher Abbott completely as the creature, Julia Garner is the only anchor we have. And if she doesn't bring those emotional stakes and let us live vicariously through her, then I feel like the picture is lost. Which brings me to the film's greatest flaw. Look, if you're making a creature feature, it's all right there in the name. Your creature better kick some serious ass. And the Wolf Man in Wolfman is just a letdown. It's been done better. Gen X side rant here. Why is it so hard to top a werewolf design from 45 years ago? I can't think of one project that has done it. When I think about Underworld, I think about how rubbery those werewolves looked, how over CG they look. I think of Benicio del Toro's film, and he was a great werewolf. He's an incredible werewolf, but at the same time, it's all CG. You just see nothing but pixels when you watch that transformation. I harken back to that old school An American Werewolf in London. When you watch that snout just drive out, you feel his agony when you're watching the legs elongate and those hands elongate. That's gut-wrenching horror. That's some solid body horror. That's something that creates a visceral response in our nervous system and gives us the horror of what it would be like to transform. I wish I could say that Wolfman managed to top it, but frankly, the results are really disappointing and mundane. And I think that's the biggest sin a creature feature can do. Giving us a mundane, run-of-the-mill creature. It looks like it was designed maybe by committee. There's no aspect of it that is horrifying or truly transformational. Now, give Leigh Whannell his credit. As he's transforming, there's some truly great horror moments when he's losing his teeth or gnawing on his own arm. Those moments are effective, but the overall design of the creature just leaves you cold. I'm honestly curious how they spent $25 million on this and only $7 million on The Invisible Man. Now, admittedly, in The Invisible Man, they didn't have to make up a creature, but so much of the design on this creature just falls flat. By the time he wolfs out, I wanted to see something freaky. I wanted to see something terrifying. I'm guessing they tried to retain some humanity in the design so the audience would remain connected to Christopher Abbott for that much longer. But the end result is very underwhelming, a little goofy looking, and frankly, a little boring. There's no inspiration. It's not horrifying. It's just a lot of prosthetics glued on somebody's face. After triumphs like Upgrade and The Invisible Man, this can't help but feel like a step down for director Leigh Whannell. Leigh Whannell has said in interviews that Universal really pushed him to make this movie and that he resisted for a long time. And, I hate to pull anything out of an interview and use it against the film, but you can really feel it in here. He said that what finally hooked him into the film was the idea of disease and aging and what that does to the family. And those themes are present. I can't help but feel that maybe his heart just wasn't all the way in on a Wolfman the same way he was with Upgrade and The Invisible Man. All right, what do I rate Wolfman? I'm going to give Wolfman 2.5 stars out of 5. There are moments of brilliance in this movie, but they are undercut by the lackluster film around it. It's like 20% brilliance and 80% what we've seen before. There's nothing really unique or special about the creature, and the heart that really needs to be there is missing in so many parts of this film. Is it worth a watch? For sure, eventually. I would wait till it hits your latest streaming service and watch it on your couch. All right, I gotta bounce. Be sure to like and subscribe. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you think there's a better werewolf movie than An American Werewolf in London, and I will argue with you in the comments. This is Gen X Movie Reviews. Later, skaters.